My name is James Key-Wallace, and I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Business Finance Authority. And with me on the webinar, we have Tiffany Eddy. She is the Communications Director for the BFA, and she's also helping moderate the webinar today. So if anybody has questions, you can use the Q&A section on the Zoom, and those will go to Tiffany, and she'll chime in as we go. So a couple housekeeping things to get out of the way before we get started. The webinar is being recorded. You as participants are not. Obviously, we can't see you or hear you, but just so you know, it is being recorded. We plan to post this online as a resource for anyone else who wants to revisit it or is seeing it for the first time. We will go over a number of things today. There'll be questions along the way. There'll be dedicated time for questions at the end. And then also, if you have any follow-up questions, you can always contact us at info@nhbfa.com, and we'll share that with you after. So today what I'd like to do is go over the New Hampshire Gap Fund and just talk a little bit about how it works and who's eligible and what the purpose of the fund is. And then I'd like to review the actual application itself, to answer any questions that people might have about, what this box means or what that field might mean, and then be available for general questions. So with that, I'd like to get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and Tiffany, I'm going to ask you to confirm that you can see it once I do it. Okay, there we go. All right. Tiffany, can you see my screen all right?
Yes, you have Google on your screen right now. Perfect.
The answer to so many things in life here, Google. All right. So what I'm going to do now, everybody, is go to the New Hampshire's Gopher page, which is goferr.nh.gov. And this is the main hub for the state of New Hampshire's kind of emergency relief and recovery. There's COVID-related news and resources and all sorts of stuff here. The stakeholder and legislative advisory boards that advise the Gopher team, those meetings and materials are all here. But for the purposes of this webinar, you would go to this page, gofer.nh.gov, and the first thing you see right now is right here, the New Hampshire Gap Fund, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So you would just go to this web page, and you would click right here. So this is going to bring you to the program overview. So I'm going to review this so everyone has a sense of what the program's all about. So the governor authorized up to $30 million in flexible funds for this program. And it's called the GAP program. And, it's called that for the reason that, as we have looked at all the different, really helpful resources the state's made available to small businesses and nonprofits, we realized there are times and situations where folks have fallen through the cracks or into the gap, so to speak. So we wanted really a backup plan to the backup plan and have the ability for folks who maybe, their application got lost, through Main Street Relief, or they were ineligible for some odd technical reason, or they had glitches with the technology and the internet, which we know happens to everybody. We wanted a second chance for folks to still try and apply for some relief. It's a little different. The program has a broader scope of who is eligible than maybe some of the things you've seen in the other funds. Again, because it's trying to catch folks, across a number of categories who fall through the cracks. So that being said, there are two main categories of eligible applicants, and I'm going to go through them separately, and they actually have separate applications because they're a little different. So the first one are businesses, right? So the criteria for the business community for this fund is that you're a for-profit business. You have at least one employee in your business that's, in addition to you as the owner. If you were if you're the sole employee of your business, then you fall into what, for this purposes, what's called self-employed. And there was a fund called the Self Fund that was special for you. So that's not this. So yourself and at least one other employee. Your business needs to be primarily in New Hampshire. We sometimes get questions, do you need to be a New Hampshire resident? Actually, you don't, as long as the business itself is in New Hampshire and the funds that you may receive are going to be used for the New Hampshire business. The business has to be what we call fully operational prior to March 13th, 2020, which coincides with the start of the state of emergency and some of the other programs. So if you were operational March 13th, 2020 or before, you're eligible to apply. Your business can't be in bankruptcy. It can't be permanently closed forever. This is for existing businesses. Maybe it's temporarily closed. Maybe it's still going. Maybe you're hoping to open up again in a month or soon. As long as you're not closed forever, that's okay. And then you need to be in good standing with the New Hampshire Secretary of State and have been affected by COVID-19. So other than that, I mean, you're eligible to apply. So, if you own multiple businesses, you can apply. Franchises can apply. It doesn't matter how big or small your business is, everyone's eligible to apply. So that's the business, and I'm sure there'll be questions. We can get into that. So now for the nonprofit, it's a little bit different. Any nonprofit can apply that is not a 501c3 or a 501c6. 501c3 nonprofits have their own special 501c3 nonprofit emergency relief fund. And we're told that 501c6 organizations are not allowed at the federal level to receive CARES Act money. Everything else is pretty similar to the for-profit fund. You have to be in New Hampshire. You can't have a primary purpose that's lobbying or legislative advocacy. Again, that's a federal rule. You have to be in compliance with IRS rules, not be in bankruptcy. The nonprofit has to be going, and you have to have been affected by COVID-19. So a couple things I should say. There's some questions right off the bat. These are grants. This is a grant program. I know we're the Business Finance Authority. People know us for loans, but this is a grant program. Another question we get a lot is, if I received support from other programs, whether it's PPP or Main Street Relief, does that mean I'm not eligible to apply? The answer to that is no, you are eligible to apply. However, we will take into account the totality of other support you've received when evaluating your application. So the application period itself started on Tuesday, July 21st, and it goes till August 4th. So it gives everyone about 2 weeks. It's not first come, first serve. Anyone who gets in before August 4th will be evaluated. And then there's a 2-week, we call it a verification period, where we're making sure the folks who are chosen for an award receive proper identity verification, and we avoid fraud and things like that. So you go to this webpage. That's helpful information. When you're ready to apply, you're going to click right on this link. But before you do, there's 2 files that you should be aware of. If you're a nonprofit organization, going to the nonprofit app, you'll see this COVID-19 worksheet. This is an Excel sheet that I'll go through when we do the nonprofit section that helps you answer some of the questions in the application. So I would download that now. You can fill it out in advance if you want, or just have it handy while you're doing the application. And then for the for-profits, you'll need to download the personal financial statement, which you'll need to submit as part of the application. We get a lot of questions about, why do I need to do this? And it's, there's 2 reasons. One is that these funds are limited in how much is available, and we need to make sure it's targeted to the areas it's most needed. And the second is a lot of the information on the personal financial statement is used in the identity verification process. So I'm going to take a quick pause here, Tiffany, because that's the program overview. And I would love to maybe see if there are certain questions about the program as a whole first before we get into the application.
We've got a lot of questions that have come in. Couple of ones that came in off the top. Our business has operations in physical locations in both Massachusetts and New Hampshire. What is the threshold for substantial business activity to qualify for the GAP program? Sure.
So if you're a multi-location business, that's very common, and not necessarily a problem for this. You can apply as long as the funds that you are asking for will exclusively be used to support the New Hampshire operation where your New Hampshire employees are.
Another question, can I use the SBA personal financial statement that I submitted for EIDL and PPP?
We ask people to use the financial statement that we're providing because it asks for the information we need for our application process. But you could look at the financial statement that you gave to the SBA and, transpose the information pretty readily.
Another question that came in, I own a single franchise that pays royalties, but I don't pay royalties on loans or grants. How do I indicate that on the application?
So we'll get into the franchise documentation a little bit later, but in short, as long as you have, whether it's your franchise agreement, which the application will ask you for a copy of, or anything in writing that indicates that this grant does not, have to be shared with the franchisor, that's all we need. There is a prohibition against letting these funds sort of flow up to that parent franchisor, because then they actually would have to apply and follow all these rules, and they're not in New Hampshire, so it wouldn't work. But as long as you as the franchisee, can use all those funds in your franchise location, you'll be okay.
And then a couple of questions about employees. And so these are 3 questions, but I'm going to throw them at you. One is, what if my employee is only part-time or seasonal? What if an employee has been laid off due to the pandemic? And can employees be 1099 or do they have to be W-2?
I'll answer the first 2 questions. Both of those situations, yes, that would count as an additional employee. So if it's a seasonal employee, part-time employee, that still counts. So yes, you would be eligible. If it's laid off and your intention is to bring them back as part of your reopening plan, yes, that would count as well. For W-2 and 1099, that's a great question. What I would have to do is double check on that, because we want to make sure our eligibility dovetails with what the eligibility was for the self fund and not have it overlap. So that's a great question. I will get the answer and we'll post it right here on this website.
All right, we've got a bunch more coming through, so we can either move forward and answer some questions later on, or I can keep asking questions, James.
Yeah, if it's about the program as a whole, let's do it now, because then we're really going to change gears into the nitty-gritty of the application.
We have one question: a sole proprietor, I cannot get a very good standing. Am I still qualified if they are not in good standing?
No, you are not in good standing. If you have to be in good standing. Now, if the question is, I'm the kind of business that doesn't need to be in good standing, as long as you're up to date with all your registrations, and whether it's whether you're registered as a trade name or whatever it might be, as long as you're up to date with your payments, your organization is where it's supposed to be legally, then you'll be fine.
Another question that came in is, I have kept 3 subcontractors throughout this period. One is elderly and lives in a home in Hanover, New Hampshire, and she is not allowed to leave the premises until now. Do I qualify?
I think if you're asking if your business qualifies, it's based on that. I don't hear any problems. You have employees. One sounds like they're under a quarantine situation, and we hope everything goes well for that individual. Yeah, but if you have employees beyond you, yeah, you would be eligible.
And also, just to be clear, 501c3s are not eligible, and that is correct for this program, right, James?
That is correct. Yeah, there's a separate program for 501c3s that had already been launched.
Okay. Great. My business is incorporated. Why do I still need to submit a personal financial statement?
Well, again, this is about making sure that the funds available go to the areas of most need. And we need, even if a business is incorporated, we need to verify that the person behind the business is actually who they say they are, and there's an identity verification process that is really important.
Okay, and one final one for the moment. We are a 501c5 agriculture state fair. Are we eligible?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, we've got more questions coming in, but why don't we move forward for a little bit, and we will get to everyone's question. If we don't get to them during this webinar, we will respond to you afterwards.
Great. Okay. So once you're at this web page, you say, okay, I'd like to apply. Remember to download the applicable statement or worksheet. So you click right here. This is going to bring you to the portal for the GAP Fund application, and you would choose the one that applies to you. This first one is the for-profit, and this is the nonprofit, and they're different applications. If you end up making a mistake and going in the wrong one, you can always come back to this, make a new account, start over. You know, you're not doomed, so don't worry about that. So I'm going to start with the for-profit application since most of the applicants are for-profit. For the nonprofits currently participating, a lot of the questions are the same, so you're going to learn a lot through this too, and then we'll go to yours. So you click the for-profit application. It just gives you a little reminder of the program. You know, it's really a gap fund for those who are primarily unable to access other support programs. Another chance to download the financial statement if you need it. So you click apply online. And what you're going to do is you're going to want to make an account. So this, I'm not going to go through because actually I already have an account. It's very simple. You just put in your email, you put in your password, you put in your name. It's very simple. So, and then you would log in. So I'm going to use my account here. Now, one thing you're going to notice, and this is something that does trip people up and we want people to know, you won't have to do this the first time because when you make an account, it's just going to log you right into the system. But if you ever come back, the login name you need to use is the email address that you used. So for me, right here, and then add .egrants, and that's the requirement to get into the eGrant system. So it's your email address .egrants, and that actually will be forwarded to you in the email you get saying welcome, thank you for signing up, etc. You know, a lot of folks, including myself, sometimes forget to put the .egrants in when they're logging back in. So you got to do that. Enter your passwords. Mine is 1234. Am I not supposed to say that? All right, so then you're going to get to this screen right here. And it says here is the fund. What you want to do is click create new submission. If you have already done one, it's going to be here. So you can come back and edit it. But for our sake, we're going to start a new one from scratch. And so the first thing you do is you need to make a contact. So who is the primary contact for this information? So this is step one. You're going to click add a contact. And then you're going to put in your name. So are you filing as yourself as the owner or on behalf of somebody else? So I'm going to say I'm the owner. If I was doing this on someone's behalf, additional information would pop up and it would say, okay, who is the owner of this business? But for me, I'm going to say I'm the owner. My business name will say it's the Business Finance Authority, right? And you would just go through and you would fill these in. I'm going to autofill these for the sake of speed for the webinar, but you need your first name, your last name, email, phone, title, your business address, where you're located, your zip code, and then either put in your EIN number or your social security number. One thing to note about the social security number is it is masked. So I have some dummy numbers. So you know, this is just random numbers. It's, you know, secure. So we'll go ahead and put in this. Right. So then I've got everything filled in. You would just fill that in. So you'd say save. So now the contact is in there and you move on to the application. So this is where it starts. This is step two. This is sort of the big step. Once you get through this, you're kind of, you know, almost at the end already. So these are some eligibility questions that are exactly what we just went over. So are you a for-profit organization? Yes. Am I a franchise? We'll say yes. Do you own multiple? Why not? You know, you just say whatever is, you know, an answer for you. You know, do you have to share the grant with the franchisor? Are you formed prior to the certain date? Is the business in New Hampshire? Are you the only employee? Yes or no? Are you in bankruptcy? We'll say no. Are you permanently closed? Do you file a tax return? Because you'll need to upload a tax return. Is your primary purpose lobbying or advocacy? We'll say no. Do you have a non-discrimination policy? This is a requirement of federal funds that anyone receiving that agrees to be non-discriminatory and has a policy. So we have one in place already at the BFA. I'll say yes. If you don't happen to have one, this is an example of a template from a kind of place online that is a pretty good one, I think. Doesn't have to be that one. I don't actually think you need to provide it to us, but you do need to certify that you have one in place. And then are you in good standing? So that's the eligibility section. And so I'm going to move on to the next section, but Tiffany, I'd like to pause for questions along the way here.
A couple questions that have come in have to do with upgrades. Can some of the funds been used to improve an air filtration system or make improvements for easier cleaning?
So if this air filtration system is something that's necessary to protect employees, customers, or for the business process due to COVID-19, then yes. So in general, expenses that are required that the business spend as a result of the COVID-19 situation or revenue disruptions that have happened as a result of the government mandated shutdowns and COVID-19. Those are the two big areas where you're allowed to spend funds. We're not going to tell you like, yes, you can spend it on this. No, you can't spend it on that. I mean, businesses need to make rent, make payroll, do upgrades. I mean, any kind of legitimate expense that was caused you to need or, you know, struggles you're making because revenues are down because of COVID-19, you know, that's up to you. That's the business's money and how to best allocate it.
Does having a subcontractor count as an employee?
That's a great question. I think that's similar to the question we got earlier about contractor employees versus subcontractors. We will get back to you on that and put that on the website for guidance. We just need to make sure that it's properly aligned with the other resources that are out there.
Someone asks, their 2019 tax returns will not be available until September. What sort of documentation could they provide? So
you'll see when we ask for the documentation question, you'll need to then do your 2018 returns and a copy of your 2019 tax extension request paperwork.
Can you edit?
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Oops, sorry. Can you edit an application that's already been submitted?
No. So at the end, we'll get to this at the end, but there's a final step where it says submit. Once you hit that, you cannot edit the application. Anytime prior to that, these are saved, you can come back to it. If for some reason you hit submit and you realize you want to change it and there's an issue, that's okay. You can make a new application by doing what I just did a moment ago, hit create new submission, make a new one, which is, you know, kind of a pain, but you can do it. And we will use the most recent one that you submitted. We don't want people to be locked into something just because they hit a button, you know, 5 minutes too early.
Another question that's come in is someone who wasn't in business for the entire year of 2019. They bought an existing business. So are there any sort of dates that applicants need to be aware of when they became a business?
This is the date that matters right here. As long as this business, you know, that you acquired was formed prior to March 13, 2020, you're eligible.
Another question, we've gotten a couple of these, is where should 501c3s be going?
Well, so the 501c3 program, as far as I know, it's called the New Hampshire Emergency Relief Fund, or the Nonprofit Emergency Relief Fund, which was on the Gopher website. I believe the application window for that has closed, and the group that's administering the 501c3 programs are right now evaluating who is getting the grants. So I think that opportunity is closed.
Do you have to provide a written agreement showing that the revenues are not shared with the franchisor?
Yes.
Okay. questions about editing, and how do you complete the owner portion if there are multiple owners?
Great. Okay. So I think that's a great question, and we're actually about to get to that. So I'm gonna move on here. So you've answered these eligibility questions. Oh, and hey, one thing I want to do real quickly. This, we recognize people need to sometimes look up information and do that and everything. For security reasons, this screen here will time out after 15 minutes. So what you want to do is every 10 minutes or so, to be safe, scroll all the way to the bottom, okay, and just click save. That resets the timer, and also make sure if you get bounced out for any technical reason, when you go to log back in, all of your information will still be here. So periodically click save. That's a technical thing that can sometimes trip people up. So here's what the person asked about multiple businesses, just bear with me and we'll see. So what you would do is you would now start entering your information, right? James, right? I don't think I'm going to put in my real social security information on this webinar. I'll put in my information. It's all stuff. This should be all pretty easy for people. Okay, so here we go. Do you own multiple businesses? Someone said, yes, I do. So you just put in the name of the business. We'll say BFA, tax ID, whatever. Name of the business too. Tiffany, what should I put? What's my new second business here?
Grasshopper Landscaping.
Grasshopper Landscaping. Okay.
That just popped into my head.
That's wonderful. That's a good name. So, so then you put tax ID for that, and you would do the same for the third business. If you don't have one, just put NA and put 0. In general, if stuff doesn't apply to you, it'll tell you put 0, put NA, just do that and move on. Don't get too hung up. It'll ask you if you have more than 3 businesses. If you do, just click yes. We will reach out to you and ask you to submit that extra information. We didn't want to clutter up the form for everyone, just for the folks that have more than 3. So just click yes, we'll call you. And then are there any other owners of the business? So if you have co-owners, this is where you would say so. So then it's going to say, okay, for business 1, which you put here for us, the BFA, who are the other owners' names and how much do they own? So for sake of argument, we'll say it's Tiffany Eddy and that she is a 99% owner. Congratulations, Tiffany. And then you talk about employees. Let's say we have 6 employees and 2 part-time. And then it's going to ask you to repeat these questions for businesses 2 and 3. Again, if you don't have those businesses, just put zeros. So for that first business you entered, this is where you talk about, well, how much other support have I received? And again, having received other support does not automatically disqualify you from the program. It does get taken into account, but this is where you would do this. So let's say I didn't get PPP, but maybe I did get some Main Street funds, but there was an error, and for some reason I only got $7, right? If you received, and then you tell, which program did you get it from, you just pick it. We'll say it was from the Main Street Fund, which is right here. Did you get a disaster loan from the SBA? Anything else that you got from some federal source, just list it. If not, you just can kind of breeze through here. Let us know if you're applying for anything else. We want to coordinate applications to save use of time. I'm going to say no. If you are, you would say you would, and how much you're applying for. So then, again, this is business 1. This is going to ask you some questions about your business. So how much revenue did your business report in 2019? Let's just say it was, I don't know, we'll say 125,000. Right? And then we're asking you, what do you think is going to happen for the remainder of 2020? We know this is an estimate. We know there's a lot of unpredictability with COVID-19 these days. So I just encourage you to do your best informed guess on what you think your business will do in 2020 for revenue based on what's happening right now. So let's say I'm down a bit and I think I'm going to be down to 80,000 in revenue. And then it's saying as of, June 30, what did you spend? Did you buy PPE for your business? Did you have to put in new air filtration systems? What have you spent on COVID-19 related expenses? Let's say this individual spent $10,000. And then you would describe what they were. We'll say PPE, new air filters. Right. And then what do you plan to spend? Business probably, they look ahead, they say, well, I'm probably gonna have to spend another $5,000 on PPE, right? So you just tell me what it is. And then the next question is, what do you think your profit is going to be for 2020? Again, based on those projections, do you think you're gonna break even? Or are you gonna have a loss? If you think you're gonna have a small profit, you'd put it in. If it's going to be a loss, you hit the minus button, just make it negative. We get questions about that. And we'll say, I'm going to actually lose some money this year. Then it asks you kind of owner's comp questions. We'll say that we got paid $45,000, and then this year not as much because things are tough and we're only halfway through the year. So then to finish out this business, you can put in how much you're requesting. Not everyone who's eligible is necessarily going to get a grant. This amount is not necessarily the amount you're going to get if you do get an award, but it's helpful for us to know how much you think you need to really survive, for the remainder of 2020. 25,000. Tell us what you plan to use it for. We'll say payroll, rent. We'll say PPE and taxes. And then we just want to know who's responsible for the oversight. So who do we, need to talk to if there's any questions? And you could just say myself. So the next section is going to be the exact same questions for if you own more than one business, business 2 and business 3. If you don't own more than one business, you just put zeros and NA in these categories, which I'm going to do and fly through it for the sake of time. But I'd like to stop for the moment and answer questions.
Kind of along those lines, does the owner of multiple corporations submit for each entity or a sole application listing all entities, similar to Main Street?
Yep. So you would submit one application for all entities, and you would put the additional businesses you own, their information here. So this is business 2, all the same questions that were there: revenues, expenses, COVID, how much you asking for, etc. For business 2, and then it would be business 3. And again, if you have more than 3 businesses, click that box up above, and we'll just get this same information from you for the remainder of them.
On the personal financial statements, should the information be as of today or coincide with your tax return?
As of today, the most recent information you have. If it's, as of the end of last month, because that's when your statements are dated or whatever, that's fine.
And what if you own businesses that are not located in New Hampshire? Do you need to list them?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I understand you wouldn't be applying for a New Hampshire-based grant for those businesses, but do provide the information.
Okay. And I just want to let everyone know, because we do have so many questions, that if we do not get to your question, we will be answering them and we will post them on the BFA website. So if you have a question and we don't get to it, we will address it. So I want everyone to know that, because there are a lot of questions coming in. What about, what do you need to show for paperwork if you started a company in the beginning of January, so there is no 2018 or 19 tax return?
I will get to that during the document section.
Okay, and what if you have not spent anything yet on protective supplies?
Then you would type in 0 for that category.
Okay.
That's fine.
Can you further define fully operational? Would having broken ground on a construction project for a new hotel or restaurant before March 31st count?
No.
Okay.
Operational means the business is up and running, accepting customers. It's, it's running, it's operational.
A question that's come in a couple times: grant versus loan. What is the difference?
So this is a grant, and what that means is this money is not required to be repaid, obviously, unless there's the case of fraud or, big misrepresentation of your application or something like that. But, a loan, is money that we would lend to you. You would have to pay back over time plus interest. This is not a loan. This is a grant program, which means the money is for the business to spend in the appropriate way.
Okay, and one more for the time being. Does your personal resources affect the likelihood to receive a GAP award?
In a sense, it does. These are limited funds, and we want to make sure that they're going to areas of most impact. This is, you hear a lot of folks at the state say this. This is not. There's not enough money anywhere to make folks whole. This is really about survival capital. Just trying to get these businesses that just need the help just to get through to the best degree we can. And if there are substantial other resources that are available to support the business and it doesn't need taxpayer funded grants, that could be taken into account. It's not a hard and fast rule. There's no cutoff dollar amount. It's part of the overall picture.
Okay, and one more, is the pro rata determined? Is it like the Main Street Relief Fund? How is the pro rata determined? Sorry.
So it's different. This GAP fund applies to a lot of different individuals. So there's a lot of flexibility in this program. So for some individuals, it may end up being a very similar pro rata calculation. There may be folks who, say you're a newer business and you didn't exist in 2019. The formula for Main Street was a kind of a, how'd you do in 19? How are you going to do in 20? And then you got a percentage of the difference once taking into account other support you'd received. If you didn't exist in 19, you can't really do that calculation. So it's actually going to be very different and very flexible for different types of applicants.
I own 7 locations of a franchise in New Hampshire. Am I still eligible? I am a New Hampshire resident and a New Hampshire LLC.
You are eligible, absolutely. Yeah, there's no limitation on the number of franchises that you own in order to apply.
Okay, and then could you further define fully operational? Would having broken ground on a construction project, I think we asked that one, sorry.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
All right, let's move forward and I'll keep going through these questions.
So I'm just going to breeze through this, folks. These are the same questions we just went through for the other business. So I'm just going to say that I didn't have one. And so, I'm just going to go through here really quickly. It tells you, just ignore this if, So this takes just a few minutes. And actually, I'm going to take my own advice and go click save. That way I don't have to do this again myself. Please continue to do that, folks. It'll save you a little bit of time, and then you just go back down to where you were. Zero. So yeah, so just, there's no way to make these questions disappear. So you have to just, oops. Bear with me, everybody. Almost there. Okay. All right, and guess what? You are at the end of the main part of the application. So once you've done that, you would hit continue. And now this is going to bring you to the document upload screen. So these are the documents we need you to provide that verify the information in your application, and we use as part of the identity verification process. So question number 1. So these are the required documents, and then there's a set of optional documents, and you can also just upload things you think would be helpful to us. So for business number 1, as listed in your application, it says, please upload your 2018 financial statements, your internal, QuickBooks or whatever it is. If you didn't exist then, just give us your most recent ones. So you would hit choose file, kind of open up a window. You would pick it, throw it in. These are just some dummy files for now. Same question, please give us your 2019 financial statements. And again, if your business didn't exist in 2019, you would just upload your most recent year-to-date internal kind of QuickBooks or whatever financial statements. If you click choose, pick the file. All right. Please upload your 2019 tax returns. If it didn't exist, again, just upload your most recent financial statements. I know that's kind of a duplication of the same file, but you have to do something to get through this. So just give us your most recent ones. Then it's asking, please give us your current financial statements. So if you have uploaded your tax returns from the prior years, give us your 2020 statements. How you doing so far this year? You know, just from your accounting system or Excel or whatever you use. You would do that. Give us a copy of your projections. You know, however you do projections, just send them to us. You know, that is helpful for us looking at, you know, how you came up with what you think you're going to do compared to what you listed on your application. Folks have asked, you know, do they need to look a certain way? Do they need, you know, what do they need to be? Most businesses do projections. You don't need to put it in a special format for us. Just, you know, go ahead and upload what you have. So then you would upload your certificate of good standing from the Secretary of State, which you can get online at the Secretary of State website if you don't have one. This is where you would upload that personal financial statement that we talked about, which you would fill in by hand and sign and upload. And then also from the Secretary of State website, you would get your either your articles of incorporation if you're a corporation, or your certificate of formation if you're LLC, whatever document that shows this is who we are and this is when we were formed as a business. You would just do it here. So that would complete the required documents section. This lower section is a repeat of all of those same things, but for business 2, business 3. The one thing that is separate is all the way at the bottom here. This is for franchises. Please upload a copy of your franchise agreement right here. You click choose, pick it, do that. If you happen to miss it, we'll just follow up with you and ask you to send it to us. So once you've done that, you would hit continue. And this is the final step. It's actually just a review step. You get a chance to kind of review everything, just to say all the questions you answered. Is this what I want? If you want to change something, you can go back steps by clicking these little check marks and just go back and go forward. So let's say you reviewed it all. It all looks good. And then this is the agreement. This says, yes, this, you know, information is accurate, you know, upon penalty of live, you know, not lied to you. I've done all the things I need to do. I agree to, you know, do all the reporting and anything that we need. Just kind of, it's the contract agreement, actually, if you were to get an award. Same as other funds have had to sign these similar agreements. You would say accept. I'm breezing through it, but do read it. So we'll say I'm the authorized signer. Put in date, and continue. Okay, now you're at the submission stage. So if you want to submit your final application, you would click submit and you're done, and you would no longer be able to go edit it. At this point, you could close the screen, log back in, go back, make changes. You can do any of that. And when you're really ready, hit submit. It'll tell you it's been submitted and you're done. So if you've made a mistake after you've hit submit, again, you can submit a new application to do it over. We'll use the most recent one, and then we'd use that one. So Tiffany, I'd like to pause for questions on that. Knowing we have about 15 minutes left, I do want to get to the nonprofit application just to show the differences. But I also want to leave time for questions. So are there any questions, Tiffany?
Yeah, we've got a couple, and my camera's off, so if you want to turn that on, or I can just be a voice, whatever's preferable. One question that came in is, we were operational, then tore down a facility and rebuilt a new one, and then just before opening, we're closed by order of the governor. So I assume we are considered open and operating by the 3/15 date. Is that correct?
Yes, as long as this business was a business that continued, it wasn't, hey, we used to be in business and then we stopped and this is a totally new business. If it's the same business that just, was rebuilding a new facility, yes, eligible.
We understand you cannot have multiple units if you are a licensee franchisee, but does this prohibit applications from separate businesses that are separate franchises with different franchisors?
So I would actually say, if you do own multiple franchises, you are eligible. So if you owned 3 of a particular franchise, that does not mean you are ineligible. And if you own 1 of different franchises, you're also eligible. You would apply and list all the businesses you own on the application.
If we own more than 1 business, do we only list the one looking for gap funding?
No, but the one, no, you list them all, and the one that's looking for gap funding, the application says, for this business, how much am I looking for? You fill that in. You list your other businesses, and where it asks you how much gap funding are you looking for, you just put 0.
Okay, if we own, if there are 2 partners, is it better to have the primary owner who has less assets be the one to submit the personal financial information?
Actually, both have to submit it, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, why would a personal financial statement be used rather than a business financial statement?
Again, I think that goes back to one of the earlier questions. We need to make sure this money is targeted to the areas of most impact, and look at, the totality of resources available. And also the information in the personal financial statement is important to the identity verification process.
Regarding personal financial statements, do the income numbers need to be monthly or annual?
I just write in monthly or annual, whatever you're putting in, just say it's monthly or annual.
And do all owners need to submit a personal financial statement regardless of what percentage of ownership they have?
Yep. Yes. Yep.
Okay. It sounds like if a business is still financially strong, albeit lower revenue, and the owner is financially strong, that the likelihood of receiving financial aid is low. True or false?
Well, I can't really comment on that until we see the application itself. I mean, the CARES Act money really is to provide relief to businesses that have been damaged and affected by COVID-19 and nonprofits. And I know we really need to get to that too. But, if your business hasn't been particularly affected, that's probably not what this is for. But if you have been affected, but not devastated, I would still apply, and we'll evaluate it when it comes in.
And will there be a place on the application to provide a narrative to explain the application?
Yes, there's a question in the application that says, how has your business been affected by COVID-19? And you can tell your story right there.
If married, co-owners of the business, do they need to submit 2 personal financial statements?
Just the owner of the business. So if you own the business and your spouse does not, your spouse does not need to submit a separate financial statement.
And for employee info, do you want the current count or the count before COVID hit?
Current count.
Okay. And then is there a definition of COVID-19 expenses?
No, it's really follows the federal regulations. It's any reasonable business expense incurred to respond to the COVID-19 crisis, or lost revenue as a result of government shutdowns and the COVID-19 crisis.
And what if you've been unable to reopen your business due to state and federal requirements?
As long as your business is not permanently closed, like you're never going to open again, you are eligible to apply.
Okay.
Right. So I need to go on to the for-profit application since we only have a few minutes left.
Okay. And again, just to everybody, because there are many questions here, we will get to these questions and get back to you.
Sure. And just so everyone knows, the webinar is only scheduled for an hour. I'm here for you, so I'll stay on if other folks want to stay on and ask questions. So I'm going to go to the nonprofit application. You'll see it's very, very similar. So I'm just going to go through in the interest of time and do the highlights. So you would log in after you make an account. Okay. You hit create new submission, and now you're here. Same thing. You add a contact. And just for everybody on here, I'm going to breeze through this. It says owner, but just if you're the executive director, whatever, that's fine. This is just a screen you have to get through. Okay, so here we are on the nonprofit site. So it says, are you a nonprofit? Yes. Do you file tax return? Yes. So do you conduct charitable activities? So this is, the nonprofit target is really for organizations who are directly responding to the COVID-19 crisis or are working with the most vulnerable populations. This is really designed to say, look, if you were going to be eligible for the 501c3 specific fund that was set up and run, but you couldn't get in just because you happen to be a 50c4 or 50c15 or whatever, as long as you weren't a 50c6 for compliance reasons, the same criteria in that program are the same criteria in this program. It's just a second chance. So do you conduct charitable activities? If you do, by New Hampshire law, you're supposed to file an annual report with the Charitable Trust Unit. So you would say yes. Can't be lobbying or advocacy is your primary purpose. Doesn't mean can't be done at all. Anti-discrimination, good standing, pick your 501c type. And then, we just fill this in. We'll say it's the James Foundation. We're on 2 Tillsbury Street. Okay. Let me go through this as quickly as I can. Same questions, employees, all that kind of stuff. So here is one thing that is different. So for the nonprofits, there's a COVID worksheet. So as opposed to a financial statement for the businesses, there's a COVID worksheet. It was on that front page. If you didn't get it, click it again here. You'll get another chance. This will bring you back and you can open it up. So I would just want to briefly review this for people. It's loading. Tiffany, can you see the Excel loading just to make sure? Okay. So for nonprofits, there are 2 tabs here. This tab is the expense tab. This is the kind of losses revenue tab. You fill in the blue, all right? And everything else is done for you. So this is for what did you spend on COVID related expenses? PPE, cleaning, technology, whatever. You can, these are just examples. You can overwrite these, you can add new ones and just put in what you've actually spent up until from March 1st to June 30. Let's say it was 25,000. Oh, sorry, I gotta enable editing. 25,000 here, and we'll say 10,000 here, right? And I think I'm gonna spend an additional 10,000. You can put notes here if you want for us to see. It totals everything up for you. Then it asks the same questions. What have you spent on things for the public? This is for you internally with the nonprofit. This is for the public, like direct assistance, food, shelter, technology, expanded programs and services. If you did something new, there, you would fill all this in. See, it totals it up for you. You're gonna wanna save this, you have to upload it. But these numbers are actually questions on the application. So it does the math for you. So you have this handy. Ditto on the second tab. This is about lost revenue for a nonprofit. And really what this is about is, maybe you had program income or canceled fundraising events that didn't happen. And this is how you would use, calculate what that happens. Let's say you had a charity dinner that normally brings in, I don't know, 15,000 in revenue. And it didn't happen, or it was curtailed or virtual, and you only brought in 2,000 this year because of COVID. However, typically running that function costs you $2,000 to rent the hall and some food. I'm just making these numbers up, but you didn't spend that. So in this case, you would say avoided expenses were 2,000. So my lost revenue for my fundraising for the nonprofit in that case would be, well, what did you think? What did you get? Well, I didn't spend 2,000, so that's 13,000 net to the nonprofit that we didn't get. So you would just repeat that for each one, and then do the same what you think might happen for the rest of 2020. Keep these numbers handy. You'll use them on the application. Okay, so back to the nonprofit. And these are exactly the numbers I just talked about. How much did you spend? I know these numbers don't match. You would simply fill in what it is. You know, what was that revenue loss that we experienced? Let's say we were 35,000 down from what we expected from that worksheet. Same questions you just did in the worksheet about the future. We plan to spend another 5,000 on whatever, and then what the expected loss is. So we'll say another 25,000. So this is where you would say, as a nonprofit, what other support you received, just like the for-profit fund. You state what it was. We'll say it was none, and you would click off where you received support from. You fill this in. We'll just say 0. Again, this is just how much other support you received from these various sources. Do you have any other pending applications? Yes or no? How much are you requesting? What are you going to use it for? We'll say PPE. We'll say, redesigning the space in our homeless shelter. And this is where you describe the nonprofit. So you would talk about what you guys do. And I won't fill it in, but you would fill it in. So you would describe here. And this is where you talk about how you benefit constituents. So what you do, describe there. How have you been affected by COVID-19? Who is in charge, staff and board, and what are their roles? You just type that in. Again, these are the same questions that you would have answered if you were looking at the other nonprofit funds. And who's related to oversight? We'll say it's the executive director. Here you list all the towns that you serve. We'll say it's Concord, Manchester, Nashua, Colebrook. And if it's statewide, just type statewide. Check off who your nonprofit serves. If it's everybody, you click broad public. Let's say it's veterans, low income, and substance use disorders. You check that off, describe a little bit about them, and you are done. So you would hit continue. Oh, looks like I missed one. I missed a question. If you miss a question, it'll tell you. Yep, right there. There we go. And that's the nonprofit application. And then again, you need to upload these documents. They're very similar documents: financial statements, your tax returns, certificate of good standing. So I want to stop there, Tiffany, and turn it back over for questions.
Lots of questions. Are personal financial statements subject to FOIA requests? Will they be publicly disclosed?
That is a great question. We will have to get back to you. We will have to put that information on the website.
Is revenue disruption considered a COVID-19 expense?
It's not an expense per se, but it is revenue disruption. And so in the application for-profits, we ask you, well, how did you used to do for revenue, and how do you think you're going to do now? So you would describe it that way. For nonprofits, there's an expense tab, and then there's a revenue disruption tab. So they're both part of what makes an application under consideration. They are different things.
If you have a New Hampshire S Corp with 3 shareholders, do you need to get personal financial statements for each shareholder?
Yes.
Clarify, please, charitable is where the money's directed versus non-charitable, such as a snowmobile organization that maintains trails at their expense to benefit the public.
So charitable is defined at the state of New Hampshire level. The question you would really ask is, do you file an annual report with the New Hampshire Charitable Trust Unit? That's the definition of what is charitable or not.
A longer question, but it talks about having to lay off a number of employees due to COVID. They plan to re-up their staff again, but not necessarily rehire the former employees. Probably will get some of them, but then also new employees. How and should this be reflected in their application in terms of current employees?
Sure. I mean, you would put the number of employees that you have now, and then when you answer the question of how COVID-19 has affected your business or your nonprofit, go ahead and tell that story, saying, well, we've had to lay off folks. We used to be at this level of employment. We hope to get back there or better. Here's how we think it might work. Tell the story as you want it told.
As a franchise owner, we do pay a percentage of sales to our franchisor for our systems and practices. Any grant or loan received is property of the franchisee, not considered revenue. How do we explain that?
So that should be evident in your franchise agreement. You do have to upload that if you're a franchisee. If your franchisor does not require you to share a percentage of the grant with them, then you're going to be fine. We just need to see the evidence of that.
Will there be follow-up to prove our profits at the end of the year are in line with our projections?
There will be follow-up on every applicant, and this is across all CARES Act across the state. We don't intend to kind of go after people if they are just off a little bit. I mean, these are projections. We all know people are doing their best guess. The primary thing we're looking at is if anyone intentionally misrepresented their situation.
Could you please confirm, is the money open to businesses in New Hampshire whose owners reside out of state? Your application says money is for New Hampshire residents only. So confusion, if the business is New Hampshire, but the owners don't live in New Hampshire, are they eligible?
Let's see, let's get the exact wording for you from the Gopher website. So the eligibility criteria is that the business has a principal place in New Hampshire, and that the money has to be spent on the New Hampshire business. Okay, so to my understanding, and if I'm wrong, we'll issue a correction on this website. But if you are an out-of-state resident, as long as the business is in New Hampshire and the money is being deployed in New Hampshire for the valid COVID-19 related costs and expenses, then you would be eligible.
Somebody wants to know, please specify what you want for financial reports.
I'm not sure I understand the question. If it's the financial reports that are required as part of the application process, they're all listed there. You would look at that and take a look. If you're asking for ongoing financial reports, part of that is actually dependent on what the federal government requires the state to supply, and some of that is still TBD, to be quite candid.
My franchise agreement is about 200 pages. Do you need the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it possible to print a submitted application?
You can print it for your own needs, but only applications submitted online through the portal will be considered.
A lot of questions. Does the federal employee retention credit count as funds received from other sources?
Yes. Yep. You would put that in there, describe it. It asks you what source it's from, and you would just state it.
A question about relocating. Their building has been sold. They're going to have to relocate in a month. Is that a problem?
It sounds like that could be a challenging, situation, no doubt, especially right now. But if you're a business that was, operational prior to March 13th, if you just happen to be moving, as long as you're still moving to New Hampshire and you're going to be in New Hampshire, that's fine. If
you get rent from your business, is that included in the compensation amount to owner?
It depends. If the rent is made to you as a person and it will be reported on your personal tax return, then yes, it would be included as part of your compensation. If the rent is to an LLC that you own and the business, often businesses separate the real estate from the operations. If the operational business pays rent to the LLC, and you own that LLC, you would list that LLC as business number 2, and it would be the income for that business.
I've never done projections before. Do you have guidance on how to do a projection?
That I could do in the webinar, but if you want some help with projections, just email info@nhbfa.com, and somebody will reach out to you and try and help you through it.
Question about getting a certificate of good standing that costs $35, but they're trying to reduce expenses everywhere. Is there any way around that?
Not that I know of. That's a really good question.
Could be for the
we don't, maybe that's something that we can talk to Secretary of State about. I can't make any promises on that. We do need that just to know that you're in good standing. So I'll look into that. It's a good question.
Okay. There's a lot of other questions. Some of them are repetitive. So I think what we should do is go through the questions and post them. And like we said, we are recording this webinar and we are going to post it in a little bit on the BFA page and also talk to Gopher. So, and we also have another webinar coming up on Tuesday in the afternoon if there's any questions that don't get answered. Great.
All right. Perfect. Tiffany, I can't re-enable your video. I think you have it turned off on your end, but
okay.
On your behalf and everybody, I want to say thank you everybody for participating in this webinar. Those questions were great questions. The GAP Fund is really that backup to the backup, and hopefully from folks that missed out on other resources, this really is designed to be for you. I just saw a question saying, can you please re-announce the kind of help email for this? Again, it is info@nhbfa.com. info@nhbfa.com. So that's it. Well, thank you everybody. Again, we are holding another one, and feel free to reach out to us if there are extra questions.